Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Equipped Agronomy Podcast.
What episode?
It doesn't matter. We're in the episode that we're in right now.
It's the second inaugural episode.
Second inaugural? Okay, this will be the second inaugural episode of Equipped Agronomy Podcast, where we bridge the gap between seeding equipment and agronomy. This is brought to you by Borgo Industries, based out of St. Bruce, Saskatchewan, Canada.
Fantastic.
So today, we've got myself. My name is Curtis DeGoyer. I work as an agronomist here at Borgo Industries. Along with me is the other agronomist, Jeff Strukoff, also of Borgo Industries. The farm manager, Jeff Strukoff. I think you might just be the special guest every single episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, special guest, Jeff Strukoff.
There you go.
So today on this episode, we want to talk a little bit about phosphorus. We're going to talk about phosphorus. We're going to talk about splitting phosphorus. And by splitting phosphorus, I mean between two different places within the seed drill. And so this is going to be in the seed row and in the mid-row bander. So we're going to get into, why we did this, and then obviously the results and where this could be useful for, either on your farm or, if you're a consultant, where you can advise others in order to get down the nutrients that you need. All about placement here. And so the reason for this trial, for this, us looking into this whole scenario of split phosphorus. So I'll lay out a little bit of the story of what was going on. We've got, kind of our bread and butter drill is a single knife, 3/4 inch tip, 10-inch spacing, 10 or 12, but 10-inch spacing with, and then we've got these mid-row banders, one bander for every two openers. So they're, on 10-inch space, they're 5 inches away, 12-inch or 6 inches away. And how do we get down enough phosphorus to supply a crop of, let's say, 60 bushel canola, which is very doable, more than that in a lot of places. We're removing about 55 pounds of P2O5, right? And so we want to replace that. Our guy's putting in, 55 pounds of actual P2O5 into the seed row. And, that answer is no, right? Kind of safe rates have always been 25, up into 30 pounds P2O5 into the seed row, right?
Yeah, that's a little high.
That's high.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where we've been at. That's what we've been doing for a lot of years. We've been replacing 25 out of 50 pounds of going in. So if you do the math on that, we're not putting on enough, right? But it was like, well, where else do we put this in this scenario, of our most common configuration? Got that question quite a bit. And so, back in 2015, 16, and 17, we decided we're going to do some trials with this. We've heard of some guys doing this split between the seed row and the mid row. And we wanted to see if it actually worked, really, and to be able to recommend it. And
if I could cut you off just for 1 second, I think it's important if you go back in history and a little bit even further to explain how we got to the point where we're at right now. Back in the early 90s when direct seeding was actually just taking off, it was kind of a novel idea in Saskatchewan, and people were renovating existing equipment, trying to turn it into a direct seeding unit. I'm not sure if you're aware, but this was a huge liquid fertilizer area around here because you could actually take any drill that you had that was a single chute type drill, weld a 3/4 inch tube on the back of it and heat it up with a torch, whack it with a hammer and knock it off to the side. You could actually pump liquid down and kind of go on the side of the furrow and not have it all go down into the seed row. And that was kind of how guys started out direct seeding. But you were always limited on how much phosphate you could actually put down in the seed row. So like you had alluded to, we're taking out in the neighborhood of 55 pounds and we're putting the maximum seed placed amount, which is, in that 20-pound neighborhood. But we're never actually fertilizing up to replacement. So as time goes on from the 90s going into the 2000s, all of a sudden guys start seeing the soil test levels go from 25 parts per million all the way down to, some of ours are 7 to 9 parts per million.
Single digit ppm.
So we were very successful in mining the soil out of, a lot of nutrients. And it was all based on the fact that we couldn't replace what we were taking out. So, what was it, 94, 95 when mid-row banders came out? Guys, that was all about nitrogen. That had nothing to do with phosphate. It was all about nitrogen. How do you get everything down all in one pass safely without killing the seed? Well, that's where banders really kind of took off. And, now, we're exploring different things, like you said, and we're trying to better utilize another stream of fertilizer to kind of get those levels up over and above. So you could safely place what you want in the seed row, but then you can safely place a bunch more in that mid row. So that kind of where this trial kind of took off, and it's actually gone further now too. So
yeah, no, and you bring up a good point. Soil test levels currently, Saskatchewan, Alberta. What is it? 80% of the soils are technically deficient. Yeah, deficient meaning, it's not so much a hard number, but I think in that any of that range, is it below 10 parts per million? Would you say is deficient? Is that what it's?
Yeah, anything under 12 parts per million.
12, somewhere around there. It doesn't matter if you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It doesn't matter the exact number. It's just like a range, right? If you're below that, you're deficient. If you're whatever, we'll call it 12 to what, 20 or so. Yep, you're good. Mm-hmm. Good. Anything above that, you're really good. You're really good. Yeah. Excess even. Yeah. You can draw it down, which is money saving in some years for sure. Manitoba's a little different. We're talking about Western provinces here. Manitoba obviously has got some areas that are a little bit higher in phos, right? And that comes a lot too. Well, you're a Manitoba guy.
Originally, yeah.
Manitoba.
I've actually successfully lived in Saskatchewan longer than I lived in Manitoba at this point, so...
You're formerly of Manitoba.
Yes,
you can officially say that.
I am an official Saskatchewan resident.
Yeah. Well, they've got some levels that are
just for the record. We're gonna start a little controversy right off the bat here, but I've always been a Rider fan. Just for the record.
How about this year?
You know what? I didn't even watch a game this year. Yeah,
I don't know.
I couldn't even be bothered to watch a game this year.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough to be a Rider fan. That's for sure. No, but levels in Manitoba a little bit higher. A lot of dairy, a lot of manure though, right? Chicken, is that fair to say, or why are their levels higher? They got just better soil,
nice black, deep, Red River.
Everything's better in Manitoba. Yeah. Soil test levels. So the other thing with phos too, so we got low levels already based on some of what we've talked about, taking off more than we were putting on, but the other thing with phosphorus, and it's a key point in this whole discussion, is it doesn't move very far in the soil, right? We can't just blast it on. Well, we can.
Not but efficiently, though.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's sometimes what happens. You blast it on broadcasting it can get into runoff, and that's caused some issues in some waterways. And, so that's an important part of this story with phosphorus. So we're low. It doesn't move very far in the soil. And we can only put so much in the seed row then to be safe, right? We want it close to the seed row because it doesn't move far, and we want that pop-up effect. So we want it close, but yet we can kill our crop too, and then you lose that pop-up effect. So this is the balancing act, and this is where coming all back to, okay, how do we get down more safely, right? So let's put in. We did this trial where we did 0 phos. We put no phos. We have this control. Always good to have a control. No phosphorus at all. And then we said, okay, we're going to do replacement rates on 60 bushel canola crop. Okay, so we're going to put in 55 pounds P2O5. In this case, form 1152 monoammonium phosphate. So we're going to put in, 96 pounds of 1152?
Yep.
And so how do we get this in there? Okay, well, we're going to pile it all in the seed row. See what happens. Are we going to totally kill this crop or not? Okay, then we're going to put all of that over into the mid-row bander. So 5 inches away, which is a bit of a no-no there, where it's not close to the seed. You got surrounded by a bunch of nitrogen, which we can talk about a little bit more, but not easily accessible, especially early on. And I would say this treatment, when we first got into it, the thought there was that, hey, we're going to put this on in this year because we're going over anyway. It's not going to be accessible to the crop this year, but we're building for next year. Once phosphorus is in the soil as a fertilizer, it's not moving, right? Mm-hmm. It's getting tied up to particles. It doesn't flow in water in soil water. Mm-hmm. It stays put. So we can put it in. It's going to be there for next year. It's not going anywhere, but at least, hey, we're replacing what we're removing. This whole concept of replacement amounts. So that was the thought going into it. Okay, what's going to happen the year after? And then we had the fourth treatment in this was the split. So 15 pounds of actual P2O5 going in the seed row with canola, and the rest out in the mid-row bander. right? And I should specify this trial, we did do it in canola and wheat. We'll talk about canola first, though.
Yeah.
Talk about canola first with it in this specific trial. So what happened? What happened? We did this for 3 years, 2015, 16, and 17. The one thing that we would see, the control sucked. It was, we would be down, 5, 9 bushels, kind of range between those 3 years. But there was a response to phosphorus.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's one of the benefits of having soil that's completely depleted and low.
We have low phos.
Yeah. You've got a very high probability of getting a phos response in our soil here.
Our soil being gray wooded, kind of a sandy loam, low in phos and potash.
High in calcium, high in magnesium.
Yep. And we're low. So a response to phosphorus we got. I would say the thing that really said, oh, this is pretty cool, though, in this trial was that all that phos we put in the mid-row, every single year we did it, saw a bump in yield.
Impossible. Can't happen.
Too far. That's silly.
That's 5 inches from the seed. There is absolutely no way you got a phos response.
And we did. Every single year. It ranged. Some years we got more than others, right? But on average, on those 3 years, we had a 5 bushel yield bump.
Yeah. I think it was the most important thing that actually showed was that we were actually accessing phosphate in a mid-row band.
Exactly. Visually, you could see the difference, right? They started off the same. So the control and that 55 pounds in the mid-row did the exact same thing. They were just slower plants, didn't have that pop-up effect, right? And you're like, okay, here it comes. We have drone shots of this. Yeah. And,
later going into flower because it didn't have that pop-up effect.
Didn't have that. Exactly. They looked exactly the same. But then that's when the magic happened. The change happened right around that flowering time, right?
Yeah. And then it flowered and flowered and
kept flowering. Yeah. It's like,
what's going on there?
Something's happened. Visually, it's happening. And when it came through to, when we rolled the combines through, the combine with the weigh wagon, replicated 3 times, we saw, hey, there's actually a response here. And, okay, this is good. And, to that point too, when did that get taken up? Right? When does canola need nutrients? Right? Not early on. Well, it needs some. The bulk of it doesn't happen until, basically when it's elongating.
Yep.
As a cereal, canola when it's bolting.
Yeah.
And then going into flower. That's when the majority of the nutrients are needed. So all of a sudden, it's got this big supply of phos just when it needs it. So, okay.
I think the interesting thing, too, that happened in that trial was the difference between putting 55 pounds in the seed row and putting 55 pounds in the mid row and analyzing plant counts between those two.
Absolutely.
And seeing how many plants we actually killed off by putting too much phos in the seed row.
Which was also a little bit surprising. So the average, so we went from 50 bushel on our canola, the control, bumped it up to 55. And then when we put all that 55 pounds into the seed row, we actually bumped it up to 59 bushels per acre on that. So we got another little bit out of that. It's like, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. We got that pop-up. That obviously helped in those 3 years. But you're right. The plant stands went from 7, and we're putting on 10 seeds. It went from 7 down to 5, right? Which actually the crop did okay, I would say, on an average.
Oh, yeah.
Putting all of that in the seed row. And, so I think some years you can get away with it. And that's what showed up in those 3 years. There were some years where it was like a huge spread in plant stands. We dropped it from 7 down to like 3.
3, yeah.
And then some years a little bit more wet years, right? It could buffer that out a little bit. We had hardly any loss. And so when you average it all out, it did drop it down to, two plants, right? 20%, which isn't nothing. But did it totally kill off the crop? No. Still got a good yield of it? Absolutely. What happened though? Maturity. Maturity goes longer as soon as
you remember that one year we actually tried to kill the canola? And we actually put 200 pounds of actual pea down, 400 pounds of product in the seed row. Still couldn't kill it.
Yeah, we still got a canola crop, and if I
seeded at 5 pounds, I think we killed 4 pounds. We were left with a pound. Though.
Yeah. There's still I think technically half a plant to 1 plant per square foot or something. Yeah, it took forever, but it actually yielded really.
It was 2 weeks. 2 weeks later than everything else, well. But it did quite well actually.
That's a good point too. I mean, plant stands. Yeah, we can nuke off a bunch of canola, but we know what canola does, right? It branches. It fills in open space. You get your yield out of your branches.
Yeah.
it just takes longer. So depending where you are geographically, like up north, up here, we're a lot of times we're chasing frost off the ground, and then it's chasing us off in the fall. So do we have the luxury of time? Some years, yes. Some years, no. But you don't know when. Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's
it's all about managing risk.
She's all a risk thing in farming.
Yeah.
So risk and controlling what you can.
Yep.
Right. And that's part of it, obviously. So if you're wanting to cut back seeding rates, well, are you going to pump in a bunch of fertilizer into your seed row and kill more?
Probably not.
Ideally not.
Yeah.
Ideally not. Right. If you're okay with, spending the cash on the seed and saying, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pump it in the seed row. I'm going to lose some plants, but I got the yield that I wanted. You know what? Okay. You can do that too. Like that's not a problem at all. Some years will be worse than others though, and you'll affect their maturity though.
Yeah.
Lower plant stand equals longer maturity. And then we got into this split where we had that 15p in the seed row with 40 out in the mid row. So we put a little bit in for that pop-up effect, which we saw, and then the rest out in the mid row. Did we lose a few plants? Still, one plant technically, yes. Anytime you put anything in with the seed row, canola seed very small versus a prill of phosphorus, even though phos has got low salt index, and there's a couple different ones you can use, but in any case, when you have those two, if you're fighting for moisture, the phos is going to win out against that little canola seed every single time. So is there a chance to kill some canola anytime you put any fertilizer in the seed row? Yes. But we ended up with about a 58 bushel. So 58 and a half technically. So, when you're looking at that, thinking, okay, well, now I can go ahead and put in some in the seed row, get my pop-up effect, but I can still put down enough, through the banders, right, to make sure I top it off. And, that's what we found. And, talking more and more over the years, different meetings, producer meetings, more and more guys are doing this. So it's something that not just we proved out, but it's something that obviously, is out there and guys are doing it. And,
well, it's something that I would actually recommend.
Absolutely.
Splitting your phos. It is like when you're asking for the perfect recipe to utilize the drill that you have the best, that is something that, the two of us actually agree on something for a change, is that you should actually split your phos. You should actually elaborate on how low we've actually gone in the seed row and still achieved a pop-up effect.
You're right. Good point. We played around with 8 pounds P2O5 in the seed row, saw an effect. We even went as low as 4 pounds P2O5. So, that's only 8 pounds of product.
Yeah.
8 pounds, 1152. And we did see a little bit there as well. That one I felt like the years we did it was kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, it wasn't as consistent as 10 to 15 pounds actually.
Yeah,
so
10 to 15.
It seems like as soon as you get 10 to 15 pounds, you consistently get that pop-up effect.
Yeah.
You minimize the amount of plants that you're actually affecting by increasing mortality.
Yeah.
And then by throwing the rest of it out into the mid-row, you're still capitalizing on that back-end yield potential too. So that's kind of what, I don't know, when I'm talking to guys at shows and stuff like that, I always recommend, 10 to 15 pounds in the seed row, put the rest in the mid-row.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems to work good. And now some of the logistical issues you got to get through on this though, 2 tanks of phos, right? You need 2 tanks in your cart with phos. Then you can't have 1 tank split into 2 airways. So you got to have 1 in each. So that's a consideration. The other consideration is if you're already humming a bunch of fertilizer down your banders, we're going to put some more down it. Well, you got to make sure your fans are sized accordingly.
Yeah.
That would be another thing to look out for.
Sized accordingly and make sure that your tractor has enough flow to actually turn the fan at the right speed too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the equipment with the agronomy kind of, you got to take that into consideration for sure. But agronomically speaking, it's a pretty good practice.
Mm-hmm. Is it doable? Absolutely, because guys have been doing it for years now. Well, maybe with that, this is a good point to actually just leave our phos conversation. We could actually take it up on our next podcast, and we could talk about dual knife drills and phos placement with that, and Trimax, and maybe a few other things.
We got lots of phos content left to chat about, but I think this is where we're going to end it on this particular thing right now.
Yep.
So, let's tune into next episode here where we're chat again on the agronomics of equipment and get you growing. Chat with you next time.